Hi, it's Bea from Crafting Daily Dose. Thank you so much for watching. Today I get to share with you the new Garden Greenhouse bundle from the January to June 2022 mini catalog. Let's go ahead and dive right in. You'll be able to find the set on page 28 of the mini catalog. The stamp images are printed out for you at 100% scale, so that's really nice for planning purposes. And it's available as a bundle, which means that you save 10% when you purchase the stamp and the die together rather than separately. You can see that Stampin' Up! Has already provided some beautiful samples on both page 28 and here on page 29. Let's take a look at the stamp and the dies in more detail. There are a total of 13 stamps in this set, including 4 sentiments. A friendship nurtured in love blooms forever, each day is a new beginning, love grows here, and hope your day is just right. I really like the mix of fonts in these, and they're great for all different kinds of occasions. Lots of friendship and encouragement cards. This love grows here would be wonderful for Valentine's Day, an engagement, or maybe even congratulating somebody on a new home. Then you have a beautiful detailed greenhouse stamp, so of course you're going to need some plants to go with that. And these are the rest of the images. So you've got some leaves here kind of on their own. Then you have a large cluster of foliage over here. Now notice that there is a flower-shaped hole right in the center, and then there are all these stems that just end. And that's because you're meant to use the flower stamps with them to layer on top. The flower stamps are all separate, which means that it's easy to use different colors and they don't all have to be the same. So it looks something like this when you layer them all together. You've got one more set of layering stamps here. You can use this as a little bush or maybe some tall grass, and it comes in 2 parts. So you can stamp the back pieces in a different color than the front pieces, and together it looks like this. Now when you're doing this one, I find it easier to stamp the back piece first and then layer the other one on top of it. It just seems easier for me to line that up. The coordinating die set is called Greenhouse Dies, and there are 18 of them. So we get several that cut out the outlines of the stamped images, and then we get all of these extra detail dies. Now there are duplicates of some of the leaves and flowers, and I always appreciate when there's more than one of a die. That really helps to cut down on the time that it takes to create something. And my very favorite is this greenhouse shape and the beautifully detailed overlay that goes on top of it. Now this greenhouse is different from the stamped one, so that means that you've got 2 great options. So here's what everything looks like when it's been cut out. Over here are the stamped images after they've been cut, and what you're meant to do with these is to take the little flowers and you can place them however you would like on top of these stems. And on this side I've put the other die cuts. So you can see 2 of these leaves, 1 each of the other 3, 2 of the larger flowers and 2 of the smaller flowers. And then here's that greenhouse shape with the overlay. Let me give you a closer look at that detail. Now for the level of detail in this die, I highly recommend putting an adhesive sheet behind your cardstock before cutting the die out. That way all you'll have to do is peel off the backing to stick it down. My favorite part is getting to show you some samples. In this first one, I kept things very simple with just stamps, ink, and paper. All I did was to stamp that large foliage cluster several different times, and then I just added a bunch of colorful flowers and a sentiment. Now for this card, I've added a designer series paper in the background. This particular bundle doesn't have a coordinating paper, so I chose the Artfully Composed paper, which is also in the new catalog. Here again, I've stuck with just simple stamping. Now to get this lighter shade of the flowers, I did some 2nd generation stamping where I stamped off onto scratch paper first and then stamped the image onto my card. Now if you want to step up the design, you can add some ribbon and embellishments. Here I've used the open weave ribbon in the polished pink color, and then these clear dots are the polished dots from the new catalog. Here's one more version with some extras. I've used the dimensional foam stickers to add height to some of the elements. And instead of stamping my greenhouse image directly onto the card, I stamped it onto some vellum using StazOn ink. And then the plants are behind it, so that it gives the appearance of having the plants being more muted, like they're behind glass. For this next set of samples, I'm concentrating on the die set, and there are lots of designer series papers to choose from. Here I've selected the Bloom Where You're Planted paper for the greenhouse, and the background comes from Artfully Composed again. Down here at the bottom, I've added some of the pebbles enamel shapes that are new in the mini catalog. Both of the papers in this one are from Bloom Where You're Planted, and again, I've got some more pebble enamel shapes. For these two, I've switched to the Pansy Petals Designer Series paper. I've also added some of the brushed brass butterflies, which are new, and use some more of that open weave ribbon, this time in the pale papaya color. Now, because the greenhouse is all about windows, it's the perfect opportunity to create a window card. This is the Artfully Composed Designer Series paper again in the background, and I've used the die to cut out the greenhouse shape. I sandwiched in a piece of the clear window sheet and then put the overlay on top of that. Now, when you open the card, you see the plants inside, and there's still room for your message down here at the bottom. Now, I didn't want to waste that piece that I cut out, so I used it to create another simple card, this time just using the greenhouse shape by itself without the overlay. I did stamp some plants down here and added those brass butterflies again. Now I get to share my favorite sample. It folds flat to fit inside of a regular envelope, but when you press down on the top edge, the greenhouse that's stamped onto the insert pops up, and then the base stands up on its own so that your recipient can display it. Now, if you're getting to see this early, before January 25th, as part of the virtual catalog tour from our team of demonstrators, then ask your demonstrator about how you can receive the supplies list and the measurements, not just for this project, but for all the featured projects on the tour, all in one convenient document. Now I'll walk you through how I assembled this card. I'm going to start with the stamping, and I'll do the insert first. And I've got it oriented so that it's wider than it is tall. Now this greenhouse stamp is a larger one, so I'm using clear block E in order to fit it. Next, I'll stamp the Cluster of Foliage. Now, this is a distinctive stamp set, which means that it's got all of these little dots here within the image. There are some places that have more dots and some places that have fewer, which results in some shading in your image. There are going to be areas that are lighter and areas that are darker. Now, if your ink pads are very juicy, you might end up oversaturating your stamp with ink. For me, I find that I do better if I tap the ink pad on top of the stamp instead of the other way around. And if my ink pad really has a lot of ink, then I might use a blending brush or a sponge dauber to tap on that ink instead. Now I'm leaving this top section plain, but it's also a good place to add another sentiment, either from this stamp set or from another one. Next, I'll stamp my sentiment onto the card base in the third panel from the bottom. And then I'll stamp some extra pieces to die cut. When you're doing this at home, put your head right over the stamp so you can see through it for the best alignment. Now my card base has already been scored, but before I put everything together, I just want to show you how I create a slit for the insert to go through. So I'm turning my card so that the long side is along the top. I'm going to find that center score line, and then I'm going to do a partial cut a little bit to the left and a little bit to the right of it. Once those cuts have been made, I'll go ahead and connect them with my snips. And now I'm ready to start assembling. Make sure that you've already folded those crease lines and reinforced them. That's going to help make it easier for you to see where the panels are so that you can center your layers. Now this layer here at the top is going to look like it's upside down as I'm putting it on, but in the final card, it's going to be right side up. Now take that insert and we're going to thread it through that opening, just like this. And I'm going to fold my card, and I'm checking to make sure that the front of the card is facing me, as well as the front of the insert. I'm going to fold this tab up, reinforce it one more time. And then I'm going to put some adhesive here. I'm going to check and make sure that my insert is centered along that opening. And then I'm going to adhere it to this flap, lining up the bottom edge. Using glue here gives me an opportunity to adjust things a little bit if I need to. Once this is in place, I'll go ahead and start to fold down the front of the card. I'm going to put adhesive along this flap after I reinforce it one more time. Going to tuck this flap under and then bring it down to meet up with the other one. And now my card is mostly done. You can see that when you press down on this top edge, your insert shows through, and you've got a stand here that will hold up your card. Now you can see right now it's popped up a little bit more than I want. In order for this to stand up better, you have to train those folds a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push everything back, sort of train my folds this way, and then I'll push everything forward, retrain my folds in the other direction. And then once I bring it back to the middle, you can see that it stands much more nicely. Now don't forget about those additional images. I'm going to go ahead and add those on now. I'm going to add another panel on the back for my message. Having this extra layer just helps to make sure that my stamped image doesn't show through on the back and that any message that I write doesn't show through on the front. When it's time to write my message, I can push everything forward this way, and this lies flat for me to be able to write. So here's the completed card. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that you've enjoyed this dose of creativity and that you'll have a chance to try out the Garden Greenhouse bundle from the new January to June 2022 mini catalog. If you're getting to preview this early as part of the virtual catalog tour, then don't forget to check out all the other presentations from the team. Ask your demonstrator if you have any questions about the products that we're using. I hope to see you again next time, and until then, have a great day.